All right. Well, we'll go ahead and jump in. We've seen a lot of people that are here and ready to go. So, hi, and welcome to our RFID strategy webinar, How to Plan and Build a Scalable RFID System. So, my name is Suzanne Gottfried from Atlas RFID, and I'll be your host today. And I'm really happy to introduce you to our two featured speakers. So, our first is Michael Fine. He is a Director of Product Management for Zebra Technologies Advanced Location Technology. Michael leads a team of product managers in overseeing a world-class portfolio of RAIN RFID devices and platform software. As a board member of the RAIN Alliance, Michael works across the industry to promote and expand the global adoption of RAIN technology. With over 20 years of experience in the RFID industry, his career encompasses significant roles in R&D, engineering, and product management. We're glad to have you here, Michael.
Thrilled to be here too. Thanks for the introduction.
And Stephen Wood, the Director of Sales at Atlas RFID. Stephen is a leader in the RFID industry and has helped some of the largest companies in the world with their RFID deployments. Working side by side with companies in all industries on the front line has given Stephen a unique and practical perspective to add real-world examples to Michael's insight on system types and scalability. All right, glad to have you, Stephen.
Good to be here.
All right, so great to have you guys. Really excited about this topic. Since Atlas is a top tier reseller and advanced location and tracking specialist with Zebra, I think this will be really impactful for our audience today. So just a quick few notes before we get started. The session will be recorded and available online within a week, so check your email for that notification. Please put any questions you have in the chat for our live Q&A. We have 20 minutes this time, so we're going to try and answer everything we can. But if we don't get to them, we will send you an email with the answer. If you experience any tech problems, try refreshing your browser, but we'll be monitoring the chat to see if we have any, outages or system problems. The educational portion, again, like I said, is 40 minutes. So we'll have the live chat for 20 and so definitely get those Q&A questions in. And remember, we have polls available on the right side of your screen. We only have 4 today, so not too much on you guys. So here is a quick look at the agenda today. So we'll do a quick RFID market overview, and then we'll walk through types of RFID systems first, which will encompass learning about basic, intermediate, and advanced RFID systems. After that, we'll talk about RFID adoption and how typical industry use cases are getting started with RFID technology and scaling from there. So we'll jump into our 20-minute Q&A. So remember to start sending your questions ahead of time. So before we get started, we have our 3 polls. So I'm going to add this one to the chat first, and it is, what do you say your level of knowledge or expertise is on RFID or IoT? I'll give you all a couple seconds to answer that. Hopefully it'll be kind of across the board today. All right, so it looks like the majority is somewhat knowledgeable, but we have some still learning, which is great because I really do think we're going to build a basis in this and then just talk about scaling from there. So that's awesome to see. So our second question that we have is, what is your primary RFID application? And this is mostly for end users, but if you're an integrator as well, maybe an application that you're really familiar with, you can add it in here as well. Okay, great. Yeah, we usually do see a lot of inventory management and asset tracking, so it's great to see that kind of correspond with what we thought we'd see on the webinar today. Okay, so our last one for now is, do you currently have an RFID system deployed or in use? All right, I like to see that. 31 people say, yes, I do. That's awesome. We will help you scale it on this webinar, hopefully. All right, well, thank you guys so much for the polls. I know you're ready to get right in, so let's jump right in. So let's take a quick look at the RFID market growth and Zebra's portfolio. Michael, do you mind kicking us off today?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. And I'm going to cover the first few slides here about a little bit of a history of kind of the space and the technology and how we got here, and then some of the growth vectors and some of the reasons we're seeing RFID growing today and where. So good afternoon, good evening to all of you. I was impressed. I saw some folks from Europe and South America. So welcome everybody. Hopefully this is an informative session, and we'll try to keep our comments kind of on time here to leave plenty of time for Q&A. So I'm not going to read every word on this slide, but the the point of this, or what we wanted to convey to everybody, is just this is not a new technology, right? The RFID, or in this case, the type of RFID we're talking about, or we're going to be talking about today, is UHF RFID, or more commonly called now RAIN RFID, or even Gen 2 V2 or EPC RFID. But it's a type of technology that has characteristics of very low cost tags, so tags less than 5 cents, very long range, like 10 plus meters of range, and you can do phenomenal things with them. But it's primarily around counting stuff, right? How many things do I have? What are they? Where are they? But it's primarily inventory technology. There are some exceptions to that. That's really the basis of this. And the technology is 20 years old, right? This started out of the MIT Auto ID Center in the early 2000s. There was some early mandates from Walmart and the Department of Defense, and then we kind of went into this classic technology adoption cycle where there's kind of this lull of disillusionment, right? But then this really kind of steady growth trajectory. And now where we sit today in 2025 is that the technology is mature, it's reliable, the tags are inexpensive, there's lots of tools out there in the toolbox, and it's becoming easier and more affordable, and it's a kind of a clearer path to ROI than ever before. So hopefully you'll come away with a lot of those or a lot of those things as we get through this. So a little bit around market growth and kind of the proof points here, right? I talked about kind of how the technology is growing, and my biggest proof point, what I like to track really closely, is how many tags are in the market, right? The more tags that are out there, the more readers that are out there, the more printers that are out there, the more projects that are being deployed. It's really a bellwether of the health of the space. And as you see on the right-hand side there, that chart is data from the RAIN Alliance. So if you're not familiar, the RAIN Alliance is an industry group. I happen to sit on the board. Zebra is a big sponsor. I'm sure there's many members on this call. If you're interested in hearing more about the RAIN Alliance, reach out to me afterward. I'm happy to tell you more about what we do. But this data is from the RAIN Alliance, and it's actually a measure of chips. So it's the little tiny chips that are at the center of those RFID tags. And the reason we like to track those chips is just there's really only two main players. It's Impinj and NXP, and then a handful of niche suppliers. So we get really, really good market data. And I kind of think of it like, almost like putting gas in your car. If you don't have gas in the car, then the system doesn't run, right? If you're not consuming tags, you're not consuming chips, you don't have your items tagged, then this industry isn't healthy, right? But what you see there is that real jump up, right, over the past few years. In 2024, we shipped about 1 billion tags a week, or 1 billion chips a week, I should say. When I say we, I mean like, the industry, right? Collectively, this industry, 1 billion tags a week. So there's a lot of stuff out there getting tagged. And as you see, the market projections is that's forecasted to double over the next 3 years. So by 2027, it's going to be 100 billion tags, kind of 100 billion tags annually being consumed, right? It's a lot of RFID tags out there. Kind of where are they going? If you click to the next slide.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Are you ready for the next slide?
Yeah. So where are they going? Right. A lot of them are still going into retail, but this is data from Avery Dennison, who makes more RFID tags and labels than anybody in the world. This is data from Avery, from an investor day presentation. I always like to track kind of their view of this, I really like this chart because it's visual and it kind of shows you both where are the tags going now and where do we expect them to go in the future. And those dark red circles, right, you can see under apparel, general merchandise, just a tiny little bit in food if you look, kind of a little bit bigger circle in logistics. That represents kind of current shipping tags, right? But when that red circle represents kind of the size of the prize or sort of the addressable market within those verticals. So you see lots of growth to come in food, lots of growth to come in logistics. But also, even apparel, general merchandise, even kind of the segments of this space that we think of as being kind of very penetrated, right? Still a lot of growth to come, right? Especially in those kind of like kind of mid-market retail players. And then finally, the other comment I wanted to make on this slide was just that path to consumer devices, right?
Okay.
And while Qualcomm made an announcement earlier this year, you may have seen that, but Qualcomm is committed to supporting RAIN RFID technology or UHF RFID technology in their chipsets that drive the the consumer handset and in enterprise kind of mobile devices. This happens to be a device that Zebra launched earlier this year called EM45, right? If you didn't know any better, right? If you saw this sitting on a table, right? You think this was a consumer smartphone. This happens to be an enterprise grade smartphone, but also inside this, fully functional, right, RFID radio, fully functional RAIN RFID radio, very short range, right? We can only read about a meter of tags at a time. You're not going to take inventory of a whole store with this, but it's a new tool in the toolbox to open up a whole nother set of use cases. And this is I think also a little bit of a preview of the world to come in a few years. Hopefully we start to see consumer devices with this technology inside it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's on here. Oh yeah, it is. There you go. It's on your portfolio.
Yeah, I think we squeezed it on there. It's often hard to keep this slide updated because Zebra has so many kind of tools in the toolbox. But the reason I like to show this slide is just breadth of, whether it's from Zebra or Atlas, right, or others in the space. There's lots of tools in our collective toolbox to build these solutions today. The left hand side that encompasses the RAIN RFID technology that I've talked about. Zebra makes devices or all the way down to the core ASICs that drive our radios, to modules that go inside our printers. You see a little Gen 2X kind of logo there. We've been working hard with Impinj lately to really enable our full portfolio to support Gen 2X extensions. But you look at that in printers and overhead readers and fixed readers and handhelds and platform software to pull it all together. Complete toolbox of what you need to deploy an RFID solution today, kind of available to our partner network right through great advanced specialist partners like Atlas. On the right hand side, you also see some of our active portfolio. We have a legacy Bluetooth BLE beacon business. We have some active RTLS technology, notably ultra wideband and some 24/730. It's called WareNet technology. We're really not investing in that space. You may have seen NFL. If you're an NFL fan, you may have seen next gen stats on NFL games where they are able to pinpoint kind of player motion and location. That's actually driven by Zebra's ultra wideband system. But really the focus of our advanced location technology business going forward, where we're spending our time and energy and we're really trying to grow this space, is on the left hand side of this chart where you see in the passive space.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Michael. Now that we have the layout of the market and the portfolio, let's kind of jump into our three types of systems. I will say too, we are going to set the slides out after this. So thanks, Benjamin, for asking that question. So Michael, can you talk us through this slide about the three types of RFID systems and kind of what we're looking at here?
Sure. So this is kind of how we like to think about, how we at Zebra kind of like to think about how our products are used and how RFID systems are deployed. Right on the left-hand side, right, we kind of think of those as presence or inventory systems. These are the most common in the space. It's really what the technology started with, and the moniker, or like the tagline I like to use here, is just count my stuff. Like, what do I have? How many shirts are on the wall? How many parts are in my supply closet? Like, right, how many of my IT assets do I have, over it's on somebody's desk? It's just what is it and how many do I have? That's the extent of kind of the presence types of use cases. They're predominantly handheld devices, right? Could be our short range device, could be a sled, could be an integrated all-in-one. Doesn't have to be a handheld though. It could be a supply cabinet, it could be a fixed reader. Relatively simple from a software standpoint, and I would say established, mature, relatively easy to deploy. Right? There's very, very good I would say paths to follow and kind of cookie cutter deployment strategies on deriving ROI for presence types of use cases. And then, an example user that I tried to pick on the bottom, just users or household names that people are familiar with. These are all publicly referenceable, right? But you can go into a Walmart store today and see the majority of apparel items, home good items, general merchandise items, all RFID tagged, and their primary use case is just pure presence, inventory. What do I have? How many do I have? So I don't know, Stephen, maybe you want to take the next one and talk about control points, or the middle one, kind of the state changes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, with a control point, right, like you're exactly, you mentioned state changes, right? So we're typically seeing a system like this, it is fixed systems where we are watching or monitoring an item transition from one area to another. A great use case would be manufacturing, which I'll kind of touch on a specific use case a little bit later on, but that's typically, what we're monitoring is that work in process, or maybe it's I noticed someone in the chat mention attendee tracking and trying to determine if anyone is interfacing with like an exhibit or something along those lines, right? That's typically what we're seeing when we say control points and status changes, is those fixed systems, and also a little bit more complex software that's required in those instances.
Yeah, right. And the customer examples on the bottom, like UPS has been very vocal in how they're using RFID to make sure they get the right package on the right truck. And we think of that as a control point in a state change being with the time that package moves from kind of a sortation facility and gets put on the truck, right? That becomes a state change, right? Now that package isn't in the sortation facility, it's on that truck that's going to your house, and hopefully, right, the truck that's going to Steven's house has the package that was meant for his house, right? And it didn't go on the adjacent truck, right? So that's those state change use cases where now that box is assigned to a truck, and then in their case, on that use case, the value is around making sure they get the right package on the right truck. Similarly in a Target store, if you've walked in, you may have seen kind of overhead. It's Zebra's overhead readers at the exits. They're looking for state changes of items that have left the store, right? Hopefully they're all paid for, right? But if they're not, then they have the visibility of kind of what left the store. And similarly on Sam's Club, if you've been into a Sam's Club recently, you've probably seen those exit kind of gantries, those almost kind of like tunnels that you walk through, and those. Sam's has been very public about there's RFID technology inside there, and they're looking to validate, right? Did you purchase the things that were in your cart, and has it left the store?
Yeah. Do you want to quickly cover this little portion of automated sensing, and then we'll get into the individual types real fast, or do you want to just jump right in?
Sure.
Okay.
No, we can talk automated sensing too, and that's kind of like the holy grail of this technology. Like the automated sensing use cases tend to be pretty complex, but the example on the bottom, I'll start with the NFL example, right? Even though it's not a UHF RFID technology, it's ultra wideband, but it's a holistic system that always on. We're tracking players, we're tracking yard line markers, in some cases even the ball, and it's a holistic system of kind of every millisecond, right? We know where those players are, right? If you extend that into into more of an enterprise use case, maybe it's a warehouse where I'm using a network of overhead readers, and I'm tracking where my pallets are, where my forklifts are moving around that facility, did I stage the material that's supposed to go on to the next outbound shipment? Is that staged in the right location? So it's about kind of locating items, oftentimes real time, although it doesn't always have to be real time. And we've seen some systems in retail as well, overheads, which is really about kind of perpetual, always on inventory, always knowing what you have, where tags are moving, kind of that real-time inventory use cases. I like to think of it as kind of like control points stitched together, right? To simplify it, right? With a control point, I can kind of tell what's going in and out of one door. But if I have a whole network of these things together, then I can start to stitch those together, and I can draw greater insights about kind of what's going on in my business than I could with just one of those. But on the right-hand side, that tends to be the most complex, right? And as you'll see kind of on a slide coming up, and also we also kind of tend to see a journey of kind of starting with presence use cases, moving to control points, and then kind of bridging to automated sensing, right? It's really hard to kind of jump in only on the automated sensing use case.
Yeah, so speaking of that, let's jump into the individual systems themselves. Stephen, do you want to outline kind of the presence-based systems and kind of how you see that in your real-world expertise and kind of what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So, with a more basic presence based system, we don't want to confuse basic with simple. We still have, those environmental challenges to consider, right? Making sure we're selecting the appropriate tag for the application. making sure we're selecting the right tag for the right surface, right? If it's metal items, or if it's apparel, or if it's, a plastic container, whatever it may be, right? Like the tag strategy and tag selection strategy is really important. And, for Atlas, working together with a partner like Zebra, there's so many options and so many customizations that we can extend to accommodate your specific product, right? So you can, have those same functionalities, or the functionality that you need, from the tag. But one of the things that I would kind of characterize a basic system, your most, kind of lowest level system is a system that's standalone, right? Maybe it's using a handheld reader like this RFID 40 device from Zebra that I have here today. And a basic standalone software system, right? It may not require any, low-level integration with a ERP or WMS, MES. It is a system that is standalone. Like, you can make business decisions in the RFID software. And a really good use case that is kind of one of my favorite use cases for a standalone, basic presence sensing system is, one of our clients. They're a large online retailer, and, with fulfillment centers, across North America. And along with that, they have a lot of, handheld IT devices that they issue to their employees to, conduct business processes, right? So, we're tagging those items, and at the end of the day, I mean, our customer is using RFID 40 to take inventory of the items in their storeroom. And that software is a standalone software application they're using to do that. But this one also has a fixed element too. Like, they're leveraging RFID, UHF RFID technology as a loss prevention mechanism. So before these items are to leave the facility, there's fixed RFID systems at the doorways. So if someone happens to have one unintentionally tucked away in a pocket or in a backpack or something along those lines, or intentionally, they're able to monitor that loss.
I'm sure it's never intentionally.
It's never.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other point I was going to make too, Stephen, is just that just because it's basic or there are a relatively simple system doesn't mean low ROI either. Like,
right.
A lot of times the ROI on these kind of simple inventory systems can be tremendous, right?
Yeah.
Just as much, if not even more, just because it's easier. These projects are quicker and easier to deploy than say, automated sensing or a control point.
That's a really great point. I mean, in this case, it's most tags are, it's a hard tag or a metal mount label, something designed for, an IT asset, right? I mean, the tag may be $2 or $3, but we're adhering it to a $2,000 mobile computer or tablet, or, so it really starts to make a lot of sense to reduce that loss. That's a great point.
All right, cool. So we're going to go to an intermediate system up next, which is our control point system. Stephen, will you walk us through this one as well?
Yeah, sure. So, like we mentioned earlier, we're talking about status changes here, or maybe even a location change. Item moving from one area of the warehouse crosses a threshold or a read point, and now it's indicated as in another location in that warehouse. These types of systems do typically require, more integration, with a back-end system like an ERP or WMS, where you're actually looking at the system that you're, used to referencing on a daily basis to make business decisions. So along with that, it does require more complex RFID software that's sort of acting as a traffic cop, if you will. So RFID, it's non-discriminatory, right? Like, it's going to read every single tag that it sees. And as you can imagine, that can kind of seem like a lot of data. So it does require a middleware software, like a program like Avancer, which Atlas provides, to act as a traffic cop, where it's reporting data that matters to you, and you're able to make those business decisions. Another use case that I like to reference here is cabinet manufacturers or millwork manufacturers that are leveraging this technology. Building a cabinet may seem kind of simple from the at face value, but there's a lot of components that go into that process. It's very much a discrete manufacturing process. So as a client places an order with a cabinet manufacturer, there's a lot of components that are used to make that up. And every component is tagged with RFID. And as this order is moving down the production line, we're able to monitor that production process and ensure that every component that's required for that specific process, that station, is there for that process to continue smoothly.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest values that our client is seeing there is at the point of shipment. They're able to 100% verify that the items on that pallet that are getting loaded on that truck match up with the client's order. So when it's delivered, the contractor has everything that they need to install those cabinets and do it on time. I mean, I've been in a position where I'm waiting on, building materials to show up. It's very expensive for, me as the home builder, but also for the contractor. So and inconvenient, not to mention just a poor customer experience. So, them taking advantage of this technology to drive that type of experience has really helped them go next level in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I like how you kind of tied it to the end customer, kind of the business value, Stephen, right? It's which is just, if nobody wants to kind of go to install a cabinet system and find out, oh crap, they shipped me the wrong color doors, or like I don't have the hardware that I ordered, or especially if it's, if you got a project timeline and you're waiting on cabinets to install tile or finish the floors, or like it's got to get out, it's got to be right, and those control point use cases are it's a great way to a lot of ROI in those kinds of use cases.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, he's saying that because he actually did have to wait on it for his house.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend building a house in 20.
No. Okay, well, up next is an advanced system. Michael, do you mind walking us through an automated sensing system? I know you've probably seen a lot in your role at Zebra, so
sure.
Give us a little bit of a rundown.
Yeah, so like I explained a little bit on the previous slide, but I like to think of these as a series of control points that just work together. And the picture you see on the right hand side, that's one of our ATR readers overhead that happens to be a phased array reader that can work in tandem with others, right? So it takes 3 readers together. But then instead of just presence or counting, like we can actually pinpoint location. So in this image, like we can actually watch live, like right where that forklift is, and you might have a tag on the forklift, you might have a tag on the pallet, right? And you can do association types of things, like did this driver pick up the correct pallet? Maybe he's getting a work instruction on a screen in that forklift that tells him where he should put it. Like maybe the system recognizes, oh, you picked up pallet number 5, and that's supposed to go to rack number 7 across the warehouse, and here's your route to do it. And and then they can, kind of workflow orchestration, right? Of okay, now I see you drop that pallet off over here. I see you're on that side of the warehouse, so you might as well pick up this item and get over. So it saves time. It's just one example, right? Of kind of how overhead kind of automated sensing systems might work in a warehouse. In a retail store, right? It's really all about inventory. Right, all about knowing where things are, and in some cases knowing where they're moving to. Are they, is it an anomaly? Like, right, that I see someone, pick up 20 pairs of expensive sunglasses and put them in their bag and walk toward the exit swiftly, right? That's, or like unusual buying patterns like that. So these automated sensing systems, they can be complex from both a deployment standpoint and then just kind of getting the right data at the right time out of it too. Like that's also a challenge, right? That sunglasses example that I made, like that information is pretty valuable when that guy's walking toward the exit, right? It's probably less valuable when he's already in his car and down the street, right? So it's it takes careful orchestration of both the device layers, kind of what's sensing those tags, the tags themselves, kind of what's tagged, and then also just what are you going to do with the data, and kind of when do you have to know, kind of when do you have to have those insights to derive the most value out of it. So clearly these are advanced systems. It's an emerging segment for us in the RFID space, but we really expect and are starting to see kind of a wave of new deployments of these, and a lot of interest as well. And one of the other drivers of these automated systems like this too is maybe you have all your items in the warehouse tagged already, or like maybe you have all your tools in the shop floor tagged already. Maybe you have all your IT assets tagged already for other use cases, and you're looking to get even more ROI out of the system. Maybe consider an automated sensing use case like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's great to talk about the different applications for it. And I think let's move to the next slide too, so you can see that people don't have to start with automated sensing if they want to go to automated sensing. Like there is kind of an adoption journey. Michael, talk us through the kind of adoption journey that you at Zebra have seen throughout the years of what takes place and how it happens.
Yeah, right. There's always exceptions. I mean, when you try to paint a broad brush like this, there's always exceptions, right? Where there are users who try to jump in at the top rung of the ladder and start with automated sensing, right? But it's challenging, right? They've if you try to do that, you set yourself up for a bigger challenge than kind of starting at the bottom and climbing your way up. But at the bottom rung of that ladder, right, the first thing you see there is tags, right? And the tags are foundational to all these systems. I talked about that at the beginning. That's why we like to use it as a measuring stick of how well the industry is doing. But it starts with tags. So you got to think data standards. Do I need to follow an EPC data standard? Can I use, maybe it's a RAIN kind of RAIN Alliance data standard or an ISO data standard? Are there industry specific data standards that I should be following? Maybe it's an automotive use case or an aerospace use case where those kind of industry groups have specific numbering systems to follow. But once you have your items tagged, right, and you've decided on a numbering system, then the most common place to start is with a presence use case, right? With a handheld, like we talked about at the beginning, count my stuff, kind of what is it? How many do I have? Right. The next one going up is, then we kind of see, okay, you move on. Once you know what you have and can count it effectively, and you look at state change kinds of things. Then you look at those control points, right? Which tags went out of my facility, what's coming into my facility, kind of what's sold, what's unsold, what's moving from back room to a sales floor, what's moving from a supply closet to a work in process kind of. It kind of varies a ton based on the vertical or use case that you're in, right? And then all the way up to the full blown automated sensing use cases, like we just talked about in the previous slide.
Yeah, and I just kind of add a comment here. With the systems that we've successfully deployed and the customers that are seeing the most value over the long term with their RFID system are those that didn't despise a humble beginning, right? Starting small, recognizing the value in one area, and then scaling to other elements of their business and identifying other areas of their business to leverage the technology. So a crawl walk run approach is typically what we're recommending in terms of getting your feet wet with the technology, familiarizing yourself with it, and then expanding it throughout your business as you become really well versed in what it's capable of doing, as well as what it's not capable of doing. So this journey is kind of thinking about it in that context can be really helpful for the long-term success of your RFID application.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this kind of sets us up well for our real world examples on our next slide. So this retail test case is a great example of different RFID hardware products working together to create a full solution. Stephen, can you walk us through this graphic and kind of about the retail environment in general?
There's a lot to unpack here. Not enough time. So I'll try my best to nutshell this. So retail is certainly one of the more prevalent use cases for RFID, and more and more we're seeing interest from obviously the larger retailers, but even small to mid-sized retailers are really looking to leverage the technology because items are being tagged at the point of production, right? So since tags are being tagged at the point of production more and more often, right, we're seeing the RFID tags in the supply chain. So before it ever makes it to the retail store, we're leveraging the technology for those control points, seeing it transition from manufacturing to distribution facilities, to the last mile to in store, right? And doing that all with RFID technology. When we're receiving something in the store, we're not hand counting. We're leveraging RFID to do the receipt. Once it's in the store, obviously inventory. Having the ability to take an inventory, on a daily basis, if needed, or if that's what you decide to do, is possible with RFID. Whereas in the past, having a team come in, twice a year to manually count everything, right? You can imagine that there's going to be inaccuracies if we're waiting, 6 months to do a full inventory. But with RFID, we can do it once a week, we can do it once a day, and it's only going to, depending upon the size of your, your store format, 30 minutes to an hour and a half, if that, right? I mean, we can take inventory of entire departments in just a few moments. So inventory is really impactful. But I think one of the biggest reasons for RFID in retail is ensuring that you have every size, every color, represented on the sales floor to ensure that you're able to make a sale that day. If I walk in the store and there's not a size 30, 32, 501 whitewash, Levi's on the store shelf, right? Like, I'm not a customer that day. So you want to make sure your sizes are represented. You can also cross-reference, what's on the sales floor versus what's in the stock room. So if you have something in the stock room that's not on the sales floor, RFID can help enable you to go pull those items and get them represented. Moving on to POS, right? And there's a couple of different angles to take this, but at a traditional kiosk type POS, right? Zebra has released their recently the FXP20 POS reader, right? It's a tabletop device that enables you to, instead of singulated barcode reads, if you have a stack of 10 items, quickly ring those things up and actually engage with the person that's at the kiosk, with your sales associate versus looking down and scanning those barcodes, right? If you've been to a retail store that is doing this now, it's a different experience. And, not to mention how quickly the queue line, people move through that queue line, just a much better customer experience. So moving past that to loss prevention, right? We're having, like Michael mentioned earlier at Target, right? Like these systems that are monitoring loss prevention. So in the old days, we could monitor if something was leaving the store with a traditional AES system, but with UHF RFID, we can see exactly which item is leaving the store. So we can see trends, right? If it's, this particular item that's a popular, item for theft, right? Like we can put extra eyes on that area of the store. If it is, stolen, like we can monitor trends across multiple stores. Like, is there a shoplifting ring of some sort? We can also monitor if, returns, right? Items coming back to the store, processing returns much more rapidly, but also determining 100% that item did come from your store versus another retailer. I think that's a great use. Like, you can 100% ensure that item you sold that item versus another retailer. So, and the list goes on. I mean, that's I try my best to kind of condense that, but
you did great, Stephen. The only thing I'd add to this is just it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right?
Right.
It's oftentimes we see the first step is inventory, right? That's number 3 on the list, but get your inventory kind of under control first, and then maybe you evolve to fitting room, or maybe you evolve to automated receiving, and it's from there it grows. But it's you can kind of pick and choose kind of which aspects of these, and that goes for the next couple slides we're going to show you a warehouse example and a manufacturing example. It goes for those two about just start with the place that's most impactful for your business and grow from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was going to say, well, maybe we just need to have one webinar on retail, because obviously Stephen could just talk about retail.
I was kind of impressed with myself getting it condensed as well.
Well, Michael, do you mind take us? We have warehouse and manufacturing. We're at 1:38, so can you do a quick?
We promised 20 minutes, right?
We promised 20 minutes, so
I'll go quick, right? So similar view to the retail kind of top off the building kind of exploded view, just showing different use cases, right? You might start with inbound, right? You might start with inbound control points. Know what I unloaded off the truck, right? And you move on to a sortation use case. Maybe maybe it's a cross dock facility or a 3PL or something, and I'm unpacking them and repacking them and moving them on out, right? So there's many kind of layers in between where you might track those boxes or pallets or containers or trays or right with whatever it is, all the way to the outbound side where you might have a control point there, which like I talked about earlier, going back to what UPS has been very vocal about, is making sure I get the right package in the right truck, the right pallet on the right truck, the right container on the right truck, right, whatever that is. But and lots of opportunities kind of in between that kind of inbound and outbound to use RFID technology.
Yeah, and I will say,
if drive ROI for your business.
If you haven't pulled back one of those UPS little labels yet. I gave Steven one the other day. We saw our first one that was, we just got a random package and we had an RFID tag on it. So it's really cool to see that for UPS. But I'll switch to manufacturing for you. Michael, I'm slowing you down. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm fun at picnics and holiday events because I tell everybody,
You just bring the tags.
Did you look at the RFID label that's on your UPS package? And
that's what I was doing this morning with Steven. I was like, and I have this one, and I have this one, and
my cousins and in-laws rolled their eyes. We've heard it before, but a similar example in the manufacturing environment, right? You can start with inbound, or right, we see a lot of work in process tracking in manufacturing. We see a lot of kind of quality management, right? Making sure all of the steps of a process workflow were followed. Just like warehouse, we see a lot of outbound shipping accuracy. Did I load the right order on the right truck? Kind of back to the cabinet manufacturing example that Stephen made earlier. And then we didn't talk about it either, but on each one of these slides, kind of featured products, kind of on or just examples of kind of tools in the Zebra toolbox that might fit at different stages of these examples.
Yeah, and we'll definitely send the slides out afterwards so y'all can take a look at each product and kind of where it's featured on those. But before we jump into QA, the quickest poll ever I'm going to add, and it's just, do you feel like you learned more in this webinar about RFID systems and how to build for scalability, how to kind of build up from that presence-based to get to the automated sensing if you're ready for it? All right, and while that's going, I'm just going to go ahead and kick off the Q&A if y'all are fine with that.
Those of you that have more questions, now's the time to ask.
Yeah, because we're going to answer all of them, whether it's email or here. So let me get to the very bottom. So I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to answer it. I want to hear y'all's opinions. So the question first from Russ is, we've been using ISO 18000-6C he said UHC, I think he means UHF, RFID tags for several years. What would RAIN do for us? So
believe it or not, you've already been using RAIN technology, right? So the RAIN Alliance is it's a group, or it's an industry organization, right, that promotes adoption of ISO 18006C technology, right? And the analogy I like to use there is, when you go to you check into a hotel, you don't ask, what's the 802.11, ACX, right? You don't reference the ISO standard name when you're asking for the Wi-Fi pass, right? You say, what's the Wi-Fi password? Well, I mean, that's the reason that's become common is because there's the Wi-Fi Alliance has promoted and kind of made Wi-Fi the common name to refer to the technology, and that's one of the goals of the RAIN Alliance is to kind of develop a common vernacular, a common set of words that's much easier to remember than the standards mumbo jumbo that just people like me only people like me can remember, right?
So that's a great one. And plus he's in the RAIN Alliance, so he knows all of this stuff too. So I'm turning David's statement into a question, and I'm going to say, he said, we want to use RFID to track metal piping. So can someone give a few bullet points on just some things to consider for that? Because I felt like we've had some questions about metal piping in the past. So
yeah, I can take this one. So it's a challenge, right? I mean, anytime you have a metal item, right, it does introduce, this, you got to accommodate it, right? RFID, we won't read through the metal. So, you kind of got to think about primarily what tag to use. And there's a lot of different flavors of tags to use for a non-metal surface, but, there's consumable options, right? That are lower cost, such as the Silverline Blade 2, which is a very, I would say our most popular on metal, on metal label. But, thinking about, the strategically thinking about the read point, how where the antennas are going to be mounted to get the best read rate. And then are we trying to track the pipes individually, or is it at a pallet level or a bundle level? Those are things that we would need to sort of evaluate, right, and determine the best recommended setup for that use case.
And I add too, is it like, how long do you want to track them? Is it just if it's a short term, all I want to do is make sure that it went to the right job site and got installed, then maybe a label based or even a hang tag or a flag tag. There's even low cost ways to tag metal items. But if you want something durable that's going to last with the life of the pipe, that maybe you want to be able to reference back to inspection data or kind of code compliance kinds of things, building code compliance, then you might choose a more durable tag that can last a long time with the item, with the life of the item. So there's lots of options.
That's right.
So I got another one. I'm going to direct this one to Michael, although Stephen, feel free to add stuff, but he's the Zebra product specialist here. So they asked, fixed readers, are they direction oriented? And I figured you could.
Sure. So fixed readers themselves, or like at least my definition of a fixed reader usually doesn't include an antenna. So a fixed reader is kind of like a radio with no speakers. Right, there are some exceptions to that, right, where we do have fixed readers that do have embedded antennas, but usually the antennas are separate, and then the question about is it directed, it just happens to be like, which way do I point my antennas, right? So if I point my antennas to the left, right, I'm only going to read tags to the left. Point my tags this way, I'm only going to read them over here, right? And then it's kind of up to the installer, kind of the system design, really around, if I orient one antenna this way and maybe my other one this way, now maybe I can infer directionality based on which one of those antennas reads tags first. Or if it's a dock door portal, maybe I want to tilt those antennas to read into the truck, so I avoid items that are moving past in my warehouse workflow. So yes, the antennas are directional, and really the way that's controlled, or the way to think about that is just good system design, kind of with professional installers. Like our partner Atlas are great ways to think about those use cases, or to get some help thinking about that.
Yeah, there's some crazy awesome things you can do with the antennas and where to put them to get the locationality. So it's a great question.
Short range, long range. There's all kinds of diversity of antennas.
Let's see. So this one might be my favorite. Thank you, Jamie, for this. Although questions, they're all the same. But so when inventory is tagged at production, what are some common ways retailers are ingesting supplier RFID tag data prior to delivery? It's a great question.
Oh yeah, that's a complicated one.
Yeah, that one's pretty dense. I will say, with the GS1 standard is the typical route. So there is an encoding standard that most all retailers, and it's certainly the recommended route, right? Data integrity is critical, and have everyone playing by the same guidelines is really important. So, that is something that, the Atlas team could give you a little bit more guidance on offline, because it is a pretty dense conversation. But I think that is the most, critical piece, working with a supplier that, understands that standard, can encode the tags to that standard, print data to the tag that adheres with that standard. Those are really critical elements of that, that equation.
And GS1 has a framework of data sharing interfaces and tools, and kind of best practices between suppliers and retail partners. I would also say Auburn University is a great resource for kind of ROIs and best practices, and just how to think about kind of supplier retailer relationships, and how to get the most out of RFID technology as well.
Yeah.
And Auburn, go ahead.
I was just going to say too, right? Like, you don't necessarily have to wait until your supplier is tagging. Atlas can enable you to print and encode those tags yourself, right? So you can apply those tags at your distribution facilities, or maybe even in store, right? Like that, the ability to do that is pretty, it's pretty easy to achieve that, internally as well, without having to rely on a supplier to get there for you.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if you're in retail and you're on here and you haven't kind of learned about what Auburn is doing down at the university for RFID, you should really, contact us or look into it. They're really revolutionizing retail and starting standards and specifications to help the entire retail industry for, like, everybody. And Walmart's, a big part of it, UPS, FedEx, like, just if you haven't already,
they've been doing it for a long time, and we're big sponsors. They got all kinds of articles.
Oh yes, definitely.
That's a great place to go learn about the technology.
Absolutely.
So one question we had is there such thing as putting an RFID reader in a delivery truck?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Absolutely.
Stephen.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like this use case is incredibly exciting because, Zebra has, Michael, you and your team have really created a product that's ideal for this, right? If it's a fixed reader in the, back of a truck, right, that's enabled with 5G connectivity, right? So, which would be the, FXR 90. And the FXR 90 is available in a few different flavors, right? An integrated unit, a unit that supports external antennas, but the FXR 90 is very durable and very capable. So, I mean, Michael, you may have some additional thoughts to add there, but
like right there's FXR 90 is one great way to do it. It can be as simple as you might even start with just enabling that driver with a handheld reader to take
True.
inventory of the back stock in the truck. We have
Mm-hmm.
field service folks who are out there kind of fixing things and maybe have mobile inventory, and they want to know like, right, do I have all the things that I might need to finish this job at that I'm heading out to, or if I did finish a job, like, right, if I'm the cable technician that comes to your house, right, maybe that cable company wants to know, like, oh, did that technician, give Steven a sweetheart deal on, hooking him up with all kinds of stuff, and just walked out the back of the van, like, right. So there's an accountability sort of
Right.
aspect of there to it with field service folks. There's like mobile stock. We've done things on garbage trucks where you're tracking, did I, like, you're incentivizing recycling, or making sure that people have paid their bills, or making sure you picked up the right person's kind of trash can and not your neighbors who maybe have a different service. Right, there's all kinds of use cases for mobility and vehicle based RFID. Even in the back of trailers, right? Even you could be even standalone trailers. Like a lot of trailers are sophisticated with vaccine shipments, or perishable goods, or food, or there's lots of use cases out there where you need traceability and kind of inventory, and or you need to keep track of those critical items kind of in the back of a vehicle.
That's awesome. Yeah. So our next one is great too. For Stephen, if you want to talk about it, they asked, are there any generic software available that we could use for just basic inventory management?
Yeah, so definitely. We actually provide Avancer, which is a highly configurable software application, and is suitable for a lot of different types of application, inventory management being one of those elements, right? And Avancer is highly configurable in that you can start out, like I mentioned, at a basic level, where it's a standalone application where you're storing your data, the data about your items, and making those associations with the RFID tag. And then as you progress up the adoption ladder, right, integrating the system with your back-end software platform to help you make those business decisions, and give your business a scorecard in terms of inventory management. So absolutely.
All right, so I got another one. This one really pertains to our topic. So I'm so sorry. So if you are trying to load cabinets out of dock doors, is it better to use transition portals or the fixed readers with antennas? I'm currently trying to incorporate RFID automatic scanning into our dock doors instead of hand scanning everything.
I kind of have to answer that one with it depends, right? You would want to. So someone else asked a great question in the chat. Does Atlas provide, like a feasibility analysis? And that is something that we do. We will, travel to your location and see with our eyes your specific application, what your use case is, even bring hardware with us to do testing there on site, and then really be able to write you a prescription, right? Like a bill of materials, give you guidance on our recommendation of how to deploy that hardware, and provide you with that in written form so you can provide that to your leadership team. So the answer to that question is it does depend, but there's things to consider, like tag population, right? Like if it's a couple of tags, we may not need to go as complex as like a transition point portal. We may be able to achieve exactly what you need with with those panel antennas. The only caveat there is, we want to kind of think into the future, right? Typically, when we're deploying systems, we want to think about, is it going to be the same item that's transitioning through this, dock door, 3-5 years from now? Do we need to kind of bake in some overhead into the system so as things change, you won't have to just reinvent your system in the next 2 to 3 years? So yeah, I mean, that's something that we could evaluate, and we'll follow up with you offline to engage with you to help you with that level of guidance.
And that's where, just like I was going to say, site surveys come in, right? It's there's nothing replaces just having expert eyes who have RFID deployment system kind of look at your environment and make recommendations. And I think, Stephen, you hit on all the right points. Just comment how many tags are in the vicinity. Are there adjacent tags? There's stray tags you're worried about. Are they items? Are they pallets? Like there's so many things to think about. It really just kind of professional site surveys is the right way to think about, or the right thing to consider when you try to make that decision. Okay, so we got another one, and this one is maybe since Michael knows so much more, or knows a little bit more about other types of advanced location. This is a question about 5G enabled tags. So are there 5G enabled tags that can triangulate using the 5G towers? I've seen prototypes in the past. I'm wanting to check if there's mature technology in that area. Yeah, that's called your cell phone. So I mean, yeah, there's labels where they have low cost, or they have low cost 5G or like cellular enabled labels. They'll have a printed battery on them, or maybe it's a coin cell battery. They tend to be quite expensive though. I mean, those are like tens of dollars. They exist. I've seen pretty good ROI on and some reasonable use cases, I think, for very, very critical shipments, like organs, or like just high value pharmaceuticals, just like really really important irreplaceable stuff. I would say those types of things are uncommon, and if you're thinking about that, like just really make sure that it's necessary for the use case, and that there's not a simpler solution. That'd be my.
And to add to that, if you're looking for a geographical location of an asset, we have clients that are tying an RFID tag read together with GPS coordinates, so they can see, okay, this is the actual location where this item was previously read. So that's just kind of a consideration, right? You may not have to find, go locate like a really expensive technology that's going to enable that, or recreate the well with a new technology to achieve that.
And we have a couple of questions in the chat about tracking cattle. So I'll read this one off. We like to track cattle on multiple farms. What are the best tags to try to achieve this? And is there any sort of application you've heard of to kind of track the details? And that kind of follows up with Eric's questions about evaluating size, health, weight, etc.
Mm-hmm. You mean to take that one? So traditionally, animal tracking or livestock has been an LF technology, so low frequency. It's 125 kilohertz tags. There's mature. Zebra does not provide those, right? That's a different that's a different frequency. It's still RFID, right? You're still counting. You'd still count my stuff, right? Count my cows, or like, right? But very different technology. It's not an area that I would say we're focused on. I have seen some deployments of UHF or RAIN RFID in those types of environments, but I think it's also, you got to consider, like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Like, right, the LF solutions are mature and work, and I'm not really sure what the driver is to think about UHF in that space over an existing low frequency tag that's already commonplace for livestock.
What about you, Sue?
Yeah, and like the tagging is typically the most challenging aspect, right, of livestock tracking. And there are a few UHF options that do exist that work really, really, well. But I guess that's something that we can follow up with you again post webinar, because we do have a couple of clients that are leveraging UHF to track their livestock. So it's possible.
All right. And with that one, I just want to tell everybody thank you. Thank you to Stephen. Thank you to Michael. I know they're both super busy, so thank you for joining us on the webinar. If we didn't get to your questions, we will email you and reach out with the answer. So expect that here within the next week. Thank you everybody for attending. We really appreciate it. And if you have any other suggestions on webinars in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know. But thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah, thank you to the Atlas team for hosting. It was a pleasure.
All right.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
y'all. Bye.